Hi everybody. So it's Friday, it's the end of the week, and it's the last day of remote home learning. Lots of exciting things going on today. All of the teachers are busy at school today, preparing the school, tidying up, getting it ready for all of you to come back on Monday. They're very excited. And so I'm going to be doing the home learning for the entire school today. So in English, what we're going to be doing is something really exciting. It's one of my favorite things. We're going to make comics. I love comics, and I used to spend a lot of my time when I was a child reading comics. My sister and I would sit on the stairs. I don't know why we sat on the stairs, but we would sit on the stairs reading comics, and then we would make our own comics. And that's what we're going to be doing today. So, in order to do that, we're going to think about our characters. We're going to map out our story. We're going to think about the scenes and setting the scenes, describing them. And then we're going to think about how we actually make comics. At various points, I'm going to put this up, this break picture, so that you can take a break. And at various points, I'm going to ask you to pause so that you can do a task. If you want to take some extra breaks, that's absolutely fine. If you want to skip a break, that's fine too. I've just put breaks in where I think you might need a bit of a movement break, a time to go to the toilet, get some water, have a little walk around and a stretch. Okay, let's crack on. The first thing we're going to look at is character development. Characters are the most important part of stories. I've put some characters on the screen here that you might recognize. But even if you didn't know who these characters were, even if you didn't recognize them, there are lots of clues in their appearance that tells you what kind of character they are. I'm sure that you could guess who the evil character is of these three, and you could probably guess who the good character of these three is. And there are lots of different clues in the way our characters look that tell us what they're like. But there are also clues in the way our characters move, the way they talk. All of those things tell us a little bit about our character. So when we look at our characters, we're going to be thinking about lots of different things. Now, generally speaking, characters are either baddies or they're goodies. I love baddies. They're the best characters to think about. And our baddies, we're going to really think about what do they look like? That's their appearance. Their mannerisms, that's how they move. Their voice, how they sound. And then what their evil plan is. Because, of course, every bad character, every baddie has an evil plan. And it might be really evil, like blowing up the world. And it might be less evil, like banning sweets in school. So you've got to decide who your baddie is, what they look like, how they move, what they sound like, and what they're trying to achieve. And then we're going to think about the goodie. Now, our goodie is essentially a regular person. And so that means we need to make it really clear to our audience how they can spot our goodie. So you need to have something identifiable about them. That might be a piece of clothing that they always wear, so that it's really easy to spot. Oh, that's our goodie. It might be something like a scar. Harry Potter has a famous scar on his forehead. It makes it really easy to spot that that's him. That's who our main character is. Our goodies also tend to have friends or support. So they might have a group of friends who are going to help them on their adventure. Or it might be, rather than a group of friends, someone alive or a spirit or something who's going to offer them advice and wisdom to help them fight this battle. But they'll need some sort of support. And then they tend to have something that makes them different. And that something might be a special skill. It might be a special power. It might be just some knowledge that they have. But they have something that sort of makes them the ideal person to solve this problem. So we need to start thinking about that. So what we're going to do on a piece of paper is to draw out our two characters. And then once we've drawn them out, we're just going to add in some words or phrases that help to describe them. So I'm going to have a go at drawing mine out here. And it doesn't matter if you're a great drawer or a terrible drawer. Really doesn't matter, because this is just a plan for ourselves. So I'm going to do my good character first. And actually, I'm just going to draw a stick man. And I've decided I do want my good character to wear glasses. And I think one of the identifiable features is going to be this bright red baseball cap that he's always going to wear. In fact, it's not going to be a he, it's going to be a she. My character is going to be called Jill. I'm going to write the name. What I don't, I realise my camera's back to front, so that word might not look like a Jill, but it is a Jill. And I don't want to really write down here, my character has blue eyes, my character's favourite dinner is mashed potatoes, my character's favourite number is 6, because that's not really useful information. I want to know what information is going to be useful in my story. So my character is going to be a huge sports fan. And in fact, they're going to carry around this rucksack, this backpack, that is full of sports equipment. Full of sports equipment. Every bit of equipment you could possibly imagine. Let me just write a few words. So I've got my bright red cap that they always wear. I've got this bulging bag of sports equipment. Any type of equipment you can imagine. Rock climbing ropes, hockey sticks, cricket bats, it's all in there. I don't need to say they've got glasses. My characters actually, they're going to be quite confident. They're going to be quite brave. But they're going to always rush in. They don't really, my character's not really going to think things through. And so they're going to get themselves into lots of messes because they rush, always in a rush, never really thinking things through. Luckily, though, they're going to have, my character's going to have a couple of friends. Nazim is going to be one of their friends, and Nazim's going to be an expert at computers. And then I'm going to have, who am I going to have? Ben, who's going to be a karate expert. Okay, so I've got my good character. I've put a few words about them. I've got what makes them identifiable. I've got what makes them different to everyone else. And I've thought about their friends and their support. So now I'm going to move on to my baddie. So my baddie is going to have eyes, obviously. But they're going to have big, bushy eyebrows. Big, bushy eyebrows. A pointy nose with a little wart on it. A cackly mouth. A very pointy chin with some hairs. Ears. Huge hair. Maybe some white sort of lightning bolts in it. I think my character is going to wear a big cape. They're going to have a staff, a magical staff. So I've got my bad character. I'm going to add some descriptions. So they're going to have wild hair. It's going to have a bolt of silver. A magic. I'm going to call it a staff. And actually, that's going to mean that my character is often hunched over. They're going to have a cackle. They're going to have, I had my bushy eyebrows. That was my cape. I'm going to put that word in there just because I know I'll forget how to spell it later. I already said they're hunched over, so they might have a slight, they might scrape their feet slightly. So I thought a little bit now about my bad character. I've got my bad character's appearance, their mannerisms, they're hunched over, they cackle, their voice. Oh, I'm going to add a bit more to their voice. I'm going to say their voice is quite croaky. So not silky and soft, but quite croaky. And And their evil plan, my character's evil plan, is definitely going to be to hypnotize everyone. So I've got my characters. Oh, I haven't given my main character, my bad character, a name. I'm going to call them Professor P. Professor P is going to be my bad character. So I've now thought about my characters, my good and my bad character, thought about their appearance, their mannerisms, how I'm going to identify them. What I'd like you to do is to pause the video and have a go at drawing out your good and your bad character. Now, if you're in years 2, 3, 4, 5, or 6, then you should be able to do this totally by yourself. You might need some help with the words, but you'll be able to manage this. If you're in year 4, 5, and 6, I'm probably expecting a few more phrases. If you're in reception in year 1, then you can just draw your pictures out and you can see if an adult could help you write some of the words that describe your character. So pause the video, have a try at this, and then I'd like to take a short break. And once you've had a bit of a movement break and you've made your drawings, then I want you to come back to this video so we can start the next part of today's activities. Okay, hopefully you've had a break, you've drawn your characters out. We're going to start thinking about our story map. Lots of people think of story maps as mountains or paths. Essentially, we're thinking about what happens in our story, the kind of sequence, the order that everything happens. If you're in year 2, 3, 4, 5, or 6, then your story map is going to look a little bit like this. You're going to have 5 main events. If you're in reception and year 1, maybe year 2, then you can simplify your story down and just have a beginning, a problem, and an ending. That's up to you, and I'll let you decide how you do it, but I'm going to talk through all 5 points at the moment. So the first part, the introduction, is where we're going to introduce our main characters. Definitely we introduce our good character because that tends to be our main character, but you might also introduce your bad character. And when you introduce them, you tend to also have some sort of description of setting where the characters are. We're then going to get to our build-up. The build-up is when our character discovers that there's a bad plan underfoot. So they discover that something is about to go wrong. And then the problem is that thing going wrong. They then, our good character then resolves that problem. They battle it out, they do whatever they have to do, and they save the day. And then finally, we have our ending, which hopefully would be happily ever after, but it might not be. But it's how has the story actually ended? Is our good guy victorious and our bad guy either skulking away or locked up or whatever? Or has our bad guy escaped and our good guy has to go looking for him in the next story? So you get to decide that, but you need to finish off with some sort of ending. So let's have a try at that. You might want to actually draw a mountain, like the example I just showed you, or you might want to make life a little bit simpler. And I'm just going to split my page into 5 parts. So I've got my intro, I've got my build-up, I've got my problem, I've got my resolution, and I've got my ending. And I've just split my page into 5 parts. So I'm just going to put notes down in here to help me. So in my introduction, it's going to be in a classroom. The teacher's going to be talking, and unlike the Vellum, they're going to be really boring. So it's going to be a silent room. And my group of friends, so it's going to be Jill, Nazim, and Ben. So my main group, I'm just going to call them friends, are all working together. And it's going to be a Thursday. I think that's going to be important later on, and I'll decide if I mention it or not. But in my head, I know this is a Thursday afternoon, PM. Okay. Now, actually, I've started my introduction, but it probably is quite important to think about my problem before I do my build-up, because I need to know what is the big problem. Well, for me, I've got a great idea already. For me, it's going to be that Professor P is going to use the interactive whiteboards in every classroom to project himself and hypnotize the entire school. And actually, I'm not going to say why he wants to hypnotize them yet. It's bad enough that he just wants to hypnotize them. And it's a comic, so I haven't got lots of room for an explanation. But his plan is all about using the whiteboards in the school to hypnotize the children. He's got a secret base in the basement that's got the computer he's going to use. Right, so now I've got my build up. How does Jill find out about this plan? Well, she goes to the toilet. It's important that she goes away from the teacher because I need her to be away from the adult so that she can have an adventure. She goes to the toilet and she hears the evil plan through the air vents. So through all the pipes that are in this old school, she hears his evil laugh and him talking to himself about this plan that's going to happen in Friday's assembly. So that's why it was important it was Thursday, because it's going to happen tomorrow. Okay, and then now I get to think about how does my team, how do they save the day? Well, that evening, my computer whiz, Nazim, is going to hack into the school. And he's going to find that there's a computer in the basement. So their plan is going to be to break in and destroy the computer. That's their plan. That's how they plan to solve it. So then the next day, they're going to have to break in. They're going to have to distract Professor P, probably using karate. And then they're going to smash, very violent, I know, smash the computer with one of those hockey sticks from Jill's bags. And then at the end of it, the head teacher is going to reward them with an extra week of holiday. So that's generally what's happening in my story. And I'm going to come back to this plan and pad it out a little bit later on. But I've thought about how I'm introducing my characters, how they find out about the problem, what the problem is, how the problem's solved, and how everything ends. What I'd like you to do is to pause this video and have a go at writing out your mountain or columns like me. You can either do 5 or you can split it to just introduction, problem, and ending. I don't mind. Once you've finished, then can you press play again on the video and we'll move on to the next part. Okay, so hopefully you've mapped out the main part of your story and you've had a bit of a break, moved around. We're now going to start thinking about the settings. Where does our story take place? Well, my story, I had 2 settings. 3 really, but one I'm not going to talk a lot about. I've got my classroom in school, and then I've got my secret basement evil den. And I guess they're going to be at home at some point because they are at home when they hack in. So my settings, I'm going to focus on my 2. I've got my classroom setting and I've got my basement setting. And what I want to start doing is to draw them out. I'm just going to flip my paper around. I'm going to start with my good setting, my classroom. It's going to be nice and bright. There's going to be a big window there. This is going to be the big computer screen and the teacher's desk. There's the teacher. And there's lots of tables. I'm going to do round tables with chairs next to them. I don't have to do, oh, I know what I want. I want a big clock here. I don't need to make it a really pretty picture at this point, but then I'm going to start labeling it. So I've got my interactive whiteboard. I've got bright light streaming in. I'm going to have a really silent classroom, but you're going to hear the loud ticking of the clock. And I think actually my teacher, remember I said they're quite boring, they're going to smell of coffee. And it's going to be really warm, I think. So everyone's going to be feeling sleepy. You know, one of those summer afternoons where it's hot and everyone's a bit tired and the mood's really down. It's going to be that sort of scene. And now I'm going to think about my basement. This is my favorite. I want a scene a bit like the photo I showed you a moment ago. So I'm going to have a big computer. It's going to be huge. These big parts. It's going to sit on this podium in the middle of the room. There's going to be some kind of console thing there. Lots of bolts of electricity. This room is going to be full of, there's Mr. Serious's tools. Maybe there's Chef Paul's got some old tanks of oil and some boxes of rotten food down here. There's going to be some rats. There's going to be a small window that's really dirty. There's going to be pipes with dripping water into puddles on the floor. So I'm going to start labeling that. I've got light trying to break through the grime. I've got dripping water. I've got scurrying rats. Got moldy food, and that's a very particular smell, isn't it? It's going to be dusty. It's going to be damp. There's going to be the crackle of electricity and the hum of, oh, what's humming? I'm going to have the hum of a large computer. Okay, so what you're going to need to do is pause this video, sketch out your scenes, and then start to label them. Remember to focus on the sounds and the smells of each of your scenes, because those are things that really give lots of atmosphere. So pause the video, draw out your settings. You might have 1 or 2 main settings, and then label those drawings, describing as much as you can, but particularly focusing on the sounds and the smells. Once you've done that, then can you press play, and we'll carry on with today's work. Brilliant. So hopefully you've drawn out your settings and started thinking about the descriptions you're going to add. We're going to start to think about the layout. Before we do that, though, I just want to talk about the different ways you might want to lay your comic out. You could just use speech bubbles, like the top comic on this page. So if you're just using speech bubbles, you don't need to use any speech punctuation, but you do still use sentence punctuation. So you still have capital letters and full stops and question marks. You just don't need your speech punctuation. Or, like the middle one here, you could just have your pictures in one box and your text in one box. In that case, you would use speech punctuation as well as sentence punctuation. The other thing you can do with either of these is just add in little small boxes. And often the boxes would have things like adverbs or connectives. So suddenly, on the other side of town, a few moments later. And it just saves you having to write an entire sentence. So you can create a bit of atmosphere. You can show the movement of time without having to write long sentences. So you might want to use a combination of small boxes with adverbs or time connectives in, as well as either speech bubbles or text boxes. So have a little think. You'll need to have a bit of an idea before you draw out your grid. And then you need to draw your grid out. So once you know whether you're going to draw squares that have space for text or just squares, you need to draw your grid out. Now you do need to use a ruler. If you haven't got a ruler, then you can use the side edge of a book to make sure you've got straight lines. It's really important that your comic has straight lines, otherwise it's going to look messy. So you're going to draw out your grid. That's what I'd like you to do now. So pause the video and draw out your first comic page. Hopefully you've paused the video and you've drawn your comic page out like the one I've got on the screen. I'm going to talk about this style here, but it doesn't really matter if you've done this style. It's all the same. And we're going to, in a moment, talk about each box. Now, in my example here, this is my title box. That's where the title of my comic is going to be. This is going to be my first box, box number 1. And then just like when we're reading, I'm going to move to the right, from the left to the right. So box number 1, box number 2, box number 3, box number 4, box number 5, box number 6, box number 7, box number 8. And what I need to do is think about what is going to go into each box. What am I going to talk about from my story mountain in each box? Well, I know that my first box was my title. That's going to be the title of my story. In my story, box 1 is going to be introducing my main character. So that's talking about them being in the classroom, the teacher being boring, and they're working together. I'm going to introduce in box number 2 my baddie in the basement, talking about his evil plan. So he's going to be talking to himself about his evil plan. That's box number 2. Box number 3 is going to be my main character, Jill, hearing that plan. So she will have gone to the toilet, been in the toilet, and she will hear that plan. In box number 4, Jill, Nazim and Ben, they're going to form their plan to save the day. In box number 5, they actually start saving the day, so they're going to break into the base. In box number 6, that's when they're going to confront the baddie. And in box number 7, they're going to defend the baddie and break the computer. And then finally, in box number 8, everyone discovers they've saved the day, and the head teacher is going to give them their holiday. So I've mapped out my plan into the boxes from my comic strip. So that's the stage we're doing now. So what you need to do is, hopefully you've already drawn your grid. So then you just need to do point number 3, which is decide what information is going to go in each box. And I would write it out like I've done on the screen. Box number 1, what are you going to say? Box number 2, what's going to happen? Box number 3, what's going to happen? This is a really important part because it makes sure that your comic makes sense. So pause the video and have a go at mapping out what are you going to write in each part of your comic. Okay, hopefully you've got something that looks a little bit like this. We're going to move on to publishing. Now, if you've ever been taught by me, you'll know that I'm always saying if you fail to plan, you plan to fail. When we're doing presentation things like comics, planning is really, really important. And actually, it's about practicing, because there's a lot going on in comics, a lot to do with space. So my top tip is to get a piece of scrap paper as well as your comic piece of paper and practice each box of your comic before you actually do it. So I might know that my box is this size because I've traced it or measured it. And this box might be the box where Jill, my main character, hears about the evil plan. I might have originally thought that my character is going to say, oh, no, he wants to hypnotize us all. And then I realized, though, that as I've made that into a speech box, there's no room for a picture anymore. So that's not going to work. So I've found that out because I planned it on a piece of scrap paper before I've done it on my real comic. So I might make a change. I might have in here, in fact, I started with the box before I'd done the writing. On hearing the evil plan. Oh, no. And so now I've got a better idea of the space I've got. I did still make a mistake. So you might decide that it's better to do this in pencil, and then once you're happy with it, go over in pen, because mistakes are always going to happen. Do remember to take your time with this, because you want each box to be really nice. So, as I said before, I would draw it in pencil. You can use stick people like I've done, or you can draw full people out. It doesn't matter. You can colour them all in, or you can just colour bits of it in. You might remember that my character Jill had that red baseball hat on. So it's really important I give them that hat, because remember, that's the thing that's going to make them easy to identify. So if you are using colour, I would use it on things that you want the reader to notice. It might be my evil villain's cape or my good character's hat. Things that are going to be really important for the person looking and reading my comic to notice. The last thing to say is don't worry if your drawings aren't perfect. In comics, the drawings don't have to be brilliant, because you've got the writing and the story as well. It's not just a piece of art going on the wall. It's a story. So not every aspect of it has to be wonderful. But I would like you to really do your best with this task. So I'm going to ask you in a moment to pause this video to practice each drawing and sentence on a scrap bit of paper, double checking the punctuation and the spelling, and then do your neat version on your comic. Once your comic is finished, on the back, I'd like to write your name and your class, because the finished comics I'd really love for you to bring into school on Monday. And then we can celebrate them. We might celebrate them by putting them on the wall, making a video of them, maybe even publishing some in a comic book for the atrium. We're not sure yet, but you need to make sure that you've spent you've done your best effort with this comic, that you really considered your spelling, your punctuation, your presentation, and that you put your name on it. That's it for now, guys. So you've got the rest of this day to work on publishing your comic. Have a great rest of Friday, and we look forward to seeing you all back in school on Monday.